Welcome back to episode 2 of my podcast. That's my logo right there. It's kind of future-y, I guess. It's like Saturn. I just drew it in Photoshop and put it there. It's kind of a placeholder, but I kind of like it. I know it's purple and blue, I guess, but it's fine. It's fine. You know what irks me nowadays? Because there's a lot of weird things that go on, like just recently, generally, that I really don't like. But one thing in particular that I've been meaning to talk about or talk to other people about is AI, right? You know the whole thing, ChatGPT, OpenAI, all this garbage. The thing is, people do this thing where they put like air quotes around the idea of AI being artificial intelligence because they're like, this isn't really AI. This is more of machine learned intelligence. It's more of if statements and all that garbage. Like, why do people say that though? How does that make any sense? Why do people believe that there is like a line between if statements and free will? You know, like what the hell is up with people? You're a programming. Everyone's a programming. Everything is a programming. Like everything is based on something else. I know. Don't come to me about quantum physics and say like, okay, but in quantum mechanics, actually in quantum mechanics, they do say some things can't be like one thing or the other. They're not led by something else. They kind of just wait until observation to become what they are. It's still programming, okay? It's still being programmed. Quantum mechanics affects everything. And yeah, you can go on and tell me, okay, yeah, but technically the brain isn't really... You know what? I'm already getting too deep in this beginning because, I don't know. This is something I have been thinking of for a while, but, you know, this is the annoying thing, right? In general, okay? In general, people think that there is like a difference, like a big difference between when you can reason, when you can feel something, and when a silicon engineered gadgets, like when technology like computes, you know, when it makes decision based on programming that has been set before. But like, why do people think DNA? We have DNA, right? Deoxyribonucleic acid. We have DNA in our bodies. What do you think DNA is? If I should ask the average person on the road, what do you think DNA is? They might be like, well, I guess it's kind of like our genes, like our code, like the thing. Well, yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's pretty much what it is. It's a bunch of chemicals. It's acidic. It's made up of different compounds, and I don't want to go too deep into the details, not because I don't remember, because biology was years ago. But like, no, the main thing is for DNA in particular, like DNA in our bodies is literally code. It's programming. Yes, it wasn't written by some other dude physically. It wasn't like a guy built a machine and wrote something. You might believe that if you want to believe that. Like, how do I know what I'm saying is true or not? But like, based on my speculation and based on scientific speculation, it's basically programming. Now, yeah, this is organic, and then there is inorganic. But then what makes that inorganic and what makes this organic? Why is there a big difference? Why do people feel like cells are so different from everything else? When it's still atoms, okay? It's still just atoms. It's still carbon-based life forms. There's a reason we're called that a lot of the times, even in movies. If you guys know, like, if you've heard it like at least once or twice in movies, you'd realize people say carbon-based life forms, like humanity, carbon-based. Why do you think it's carbon-based? It's because we're made mostly from carbon and water, but carbon, and oxygen, but carbon. Why carbon? Because, I don't know, carbon just happens to have very strong bonds, and it also just propagates life a lot easier. There's a lot of reasoning towards this, and it works best because of our atmosphere. People do talk about the fact that there's a whole chance or likelihood that aliens, for example, exist somewhere else where there's not as much oxygen on Earth as, like, for example, nitrogen. Maybe they're nitrogen or nitrogenous organisms that take in nitrogen, and because of that, they might not need to use carbon to survive. Like, there's so much speculation, but because, you know, of our inbuilt egos and feeling like, okay, we have to be special somehow, right? Because we're observing the universe. But like, why do we think that? Because that's basically what the brain does. That's just what the brain does. That's what every animal does. Every animal prioritizes itself. Every form of life prioritizes itself. Every form of organism does that. Everything leeches off of its surroundings to survive, because that's kind of what life is. So like, what pisses me off is when people are like very quick to just disbound the idea of AI being a form of life, and that it's not really life because it's made out of silicon and all this garbage. Well, first of all, silicon, no, there's a lot of problems with that statement alone, but let's not get into like technological nitty-gritty. But like, it's still life. Okay, it's still life. Why am I so upset about this? Is because when people start talking about how AI, for example, computer-based programming and stuff, starts creating things and starts making things based off of other people's inputs and the fact that it's learning from humanity, well, of course it has to do that. That's what living things do. That's what everything does. It learns from other things. A baby wouldn't walk if it didn't learn to walk. That's literally true. There's a lot of instances where people like different people have scavenged like forests, and I think there's like a whole, I don't want to like go too much in detail about this, but it's like a whole documentary that was about like a kid that basically was just found in the wild, and I think the kid grew up with some kind of animal like in the woods. It's either like bears or something, but the kid didn't walk like a human being walks, like a person on the street, like an average person walks. Why? Because it didn't learn from anyone. It just kind of saw animals and figured, oh, okay, I'm hungry. I watch what these animals are doing. They put things in their mouths and kind of just did that. Probably some animals helped it out as well, because it was a baby, instincts and stuff, It's just mother nature, for those of us out there who believe in that. But like, this is the thing. That child didn't learn that because it wasn't told to do that. So you still need programming to tell you what to do. It's just weird because we have terms for things. You know how English is all about nomenclature, and it's all about how words express feelings, even though those words aren't actually expressing exactly how you feel and all that garbage. But still, it's words, okay? It's just terms we use to explain things. It's sounds we make from our mouths that we've somehow learned to understand and transcribe. But this is the thing. It's still all life. It's still the same thing. It's a different classification because we want to do that, because we like doing things like that. We like classifying things, as good and bad as that may be, because that's the thing. The only reason I'm able to talk in a coherent manner and you can understand what I'm saying is because we classified words, because we classified emotions, because we classified meanings of things or of ideas in our minds to different specific words. And that's great. But then there's also the problem where it's like we classify people as well. We classify groups of people. We classify types of people. We classify color. We classify everything. So it's like, because of that, a lot of people have come to reason that, okay, you seem like it's like we go forward and then go backwards in a sense, because we first classify people because of how they look, and then we kind of classify how people look based on the classification itself. I don't know if anyone's understanding what I'm saying, but like, for example, Africans classified as Africans. Let's say we were classified as these people from Africa. Now, if you saw a random person who had like my face structure, for example, and the person was like, he looked like me, had the same skin color and everything, you wouldn't say, okay, this guy isn't in Africa, so he's not African. No, you would be like, this guy's probably African. Why? Because now you're redirecting it. You're like, okay, people who live in Africa are from Africans, or people who are born in Africa are Africans, and this is what they look like. So if you look like this, you must be African. It's like it's normal. Like, this is primary school stuff. It's stuff we learn normally. I think it's the transitive property or something. I don't remember. But like, it's basically that. It's like, okay, because of this, if statements. It's all classifications. So why is it that when we just choose to classify some things, like the biggest issue from the whole thing is that when we classify some things to be generally negative and some things to be generally positive, anything who gets in any way close to grouped in that class, because of the human brain and its inherent laziness, like naturally, we don't want to have to group those again. We don't want to have more groups of people or more groups of things. We want like something general, you know? We want like, okay, humanity, artificial intelligence, or humanity, or carbon-based life form, silicon-based life form. Great. Like we want that kind of clarity in our brains because it's easier to think yes or no, or this or that, than it is to think, well, this may be this, but maybe that, but maybe this, but maybe that as well. Because that's just the thing. It's the brain. It's the brain for you. It wants to be lazy. Like life is basically just the brain trying to be lazy, or trying to be as much as carefree as possible. And sometimes you push yourself, you know, your brain pushes itself, because at the end of the day we're just brains. We push ourselves to want to do more, but then the brain doesn't really want to do that. So it's like an in-between, it's like 50-50 situation when it's like, okay, now I want to do this, but I don't really want to, but at the same time I want to. So it's like the brain itself being indecisive, and all of this is still programming. It's still based on how you were brought up. There's a reason a lot of people who were brought up in like military aspects and stuff have very strict yes or no like basis of life. If you ask them a question, they give you a direct answer. But that's all programming. Whereas a kid who's just born on the like in the regular, you know, vicinity of like in a regular community with like just a regular basic life, you know, the NPC lifestyle, well, you don't really matter much to anybody, but like you're just living, you know, you're just coping, you're not causing any harm. It's great. The problem with that whole thing is when you live that kind of life, you're not so certain what to say yes to, what to say no to, or what choices you want to make. And that feeling is what people think is what humanity is all about. You know, that because we can go through all these deviations, that's what makes us life. That's what makes us conscious. And what makes other, I don't know, other forms non-sentient. Like when you reach that point, that's when you become sentient, which is another group. It's just non-sentient, sentient. When that doesn't really make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? Because there is an in-between. There's no switch. There's no points to determine exactly. There's no actual range. And even if there was a range, it's basically infinite. It's like dividing 0 and 1. How many divisions are between the number 0 and number 1? It's infinite. You can be somewhere between. And you could be 0, you could be 1, but most times you are somewhere between. Everything is somewhere between. Like at the point we're in the universe. So like, it's weird when people just define one thing as a specific thing, like a specific trait, because that's kind of what we've grown up to do. And I understand why people do this. It's just, that's the thing. Every time I talk about stuff like this, it's always like, God, everything is frustrating this guy. Like I'm always so pissed about everything. I'm not. I'm just very, very hyperactively curious. I do have a lot of empathy for people, and I understand why people do things, because it's like, this is just upbringing at the end of the day. It's like, if you've been brought up to think you've not been brought up the way you were brought up, then you would think that way. That's very complicated. I'm going to repeat my statements without sounding like an idiot. So, if you were brought up in a specific way, and you were trained in your mind to think that's not the reason you behave the way you behave, then you would think that you had free will, like you just basically behaved the way you wanted to behave because that's just you. Whereas you were just taught to believe like that, to think like that, to just become like that. And I happen to not, like this all goes down to even me. I happen to not be brought up that way. I wasn't brought up to think, okay, yes and no answers and this, and I wasn't brought up very one-dimensional. I wasn't brought up like yes, no, or this, that. I was brought up with multiple options. If I want to use, I don't know, let's use vector scales. I wasn't brought up in 2D. I didn't have like a yes and a no line, like the X and Y axis. I was brought up in more of a 3-dimensional, maybe even 4-dimensional reality, where it's like, I choose that I could know this, but I know that I might not really know it. I know that me thinking I know this is also biased by myself because it's my brain, and I understand all these things. And yes, sometimes it makes life a lot more difficult. Like, let's be perfectly honest, when you have to second guess everything because you're like, but I know it might not be. Yeah, but like, because like even science, even all these facts I'm telling you, like, I just believe this, and I'm 100% biased. But at the same time, I don't think being biased inherently makes you wrong, because another group, another classification again, is the word biased. When you hear the word bias, you kind of have this negative tendency towards it, like just instinctively, because that's what we've been programmed to think. Most people think like biased means like sort of influenced by something negatively. I don't know why, but that's just connotation. That's just how the word has feeling. And there's a lot of nomenclature like this. Like there's a lot of words that just the word alone has a negative connotation to it, and because it has a negative connotation to it, we just immediately instinctively feel like we should feel negatively towards this. Like a lot of things. There's like a lot of terms, a lot of different things that I could list out that you'd be like, okay, yeah, this is probably a negative thing. Like the word negative, literally the word negative. And I don't know what they call these. Are these called like, I don't know. I think I said this in last episode, now I'm remembering. But like words like that, I don't really know what I'll classify them under. I think there's a word for them in the English. It's funny because there's a word in English language that groups other words in English language, but it itself is sort of also part of a group. So it's like a sort of some kind of paradox. I don't know. But like this is the thing. Because we have all these groupings for words, and because we have like feelings that are supposed to be like fixed to each one of these words, because that's kind of how words work, we tend to believe when someone classifies something in any way with any of these words, then they mean something negative. And I don't like that. I really don't like that. I don't like that when I say someone is behaving ignorant, people just kind of feel like, okay, he's insulting this person. I'm not insulting you. Ignorance is just absence of knowledge, absence of understanding. If you've never skydove before, you've never actually had the experience, then you're ignorant of that experience of skydiving. You might not be ignorant of the idea, like you might know all the things there is to know, but you've not experienced it. So you are ignorant to that experience of skydiving because you've just not done that. You've not had that experience. And I think that's fine. I'm ignorant of a lot of things. A lot of things. But like the thing is, I don't feel like that's negative. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Because that word ignorance, even dictionary explained, like dictionary meaning, it's not supposed to be fully negative. That might be one of the ways it's used, and a lot of different synonyms for the word ignorance might be towards the negative side, like stupid or like I don't know, dumb or something. Like that's not what I'm using it for, which is why context matters. But like back to the whole point of AI, the thing is when we group something as a particular thing, like AI is one thing, humanity one other thing, that comes with its own bad sides to things. It comes with its own negative connotation, which is that when we now think, okay, human beings higher priority over everything else, because that's just our inbuilt genetic, that's just our bias, it's nature for us. Because we think humans first, that just kind of trumps everything else. That's our inherent bias. And it's not necessarily negative, it's not necessarily positive. You can't really tell what's negative or positive in this world. It's another thing I'm hinting towards that because that's something I'm going to talk about in extent in another episode. But like, you can't really tell. There's no real line there. It's like, it's sometimes seen from your perspective as negative, but it could be seen from another perspective, from not even just another human perspective, because that's another thing people keep forgetting. It could be something completely different. Because like, a little side tangent, one of the reasons people are obviously against global warming and stuff like that is not just because you're damaging the earth. Because when you really think about it, how are you damaging the earth? How do you know the earth wasn't supposed to be fried and cooked by the sun? How do you know that's not what the earth wants? If you put food inside a microwave, do you think you're damaging the food? No, you're warming it up because you want to eat it. So to like in the food's perspective, it's being damaged. But in your perspective, it's being cooked. If you put something on fire, that's exactly what you're doing. And I like using these terminologies because it's easier to just put in, it's easy to understand. It's another way of classifying things, I guess. But the thing is, when you do these things to the earth, it helps you first. That's the reason you're doing it. It's an inherent bias by humanity, by every form of life form. I'm not even putting like humanity in the spotlight because like this is just a thing about life. The whole reason every form of life exists is because it thrives to exist. Like that's its reason, that's its purpose. Like that's the whole thing. Any animal that somehow didn't make it through the gene pool of like evolution and stuff, any animal that didn't make it, usually just got outclassed by other forms of life. The dodo bird, for example. What purpose did it bring? So like the entire ecosystem, the entire life that originated somehow, but like that's another topic. But like all this life, what do you think happened with that dodo bird? Why do you think it went extinct? It just wasn't good enough. that's literally it. It had to pick up its socks. It had to do better. You know, it wasn't doing great, and that's basically it. And yeah, you might be like, oh, what about the woolly mammoths? You know, humans hunted them to extinction. Well, yeah. Do you know how many animals humans hunted then? We hunted a lot of animals. A lot of them then didn't go extinct. A lot of them fought back. We hunted bears. We hunted lions. We hunted a ton of animals. It just so happened that we hunted mammoths, and we just kept hunting them and hunting them and hunting, just like other animals hunted and hunted and hunted dodo birds until they were just gone. And now, because of our inherent bias, which is now the new thing, which is like, this is kind of a new trend for humanity, where it's like empathy, where like, don't do that anymore, because if you keep killing off these animals, then it will destabilize the ecosystem. Well, that's the thing. That's a question I always keep asking. I'm not for or against this, but why do we feel like stability is when everything is kind of just there? You know, everything is just, because most people, their ideal reality is where all humans and all animals just kind of coexist. You know, like the Garden of Eden days, for those of you religious people out there. So it's like, okay, so there's like a point right there where everything is supposed to be nice and formed and just situated properly. But that doesn't make any sense. That's the thing. That's what's funny about it. This is kind of forceful. This is just nature. This is genealogy. This is evolution. All of this stuff happening is evolution. Yes, there's a lot of negative connotation to that. And now people are going to be like, oh, so you're telling me all the killings, all the things Hitler has done is part of evolution? I'm sorry to tell you, it is. It 100% is. It's horrible for our perspective because it's like, why are you killing innocent people? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? But it's part of life. It's literally part of nature. And I'm not saying, oh, okay, so since it's part of nature, we should just forget about it. We should just kill all the people. Don't be an asshole. Why do you want to do that? It's not helping you in any way. It's not helping anyone in any way. None of these things are helping anyone. And that's the whole thing that we have to kind of put behind our minds. If what you're doing is just meaninglessly, like just a stupid thing, like it straight up doesn't do anything to help in any way. Like people who like burn tires and stuff just for fun. I can't think of anything like specific that you don't get any form of pleasure from. Like if you're doing something purely just for mental pleasure in any way that doesn't translate to anything good, like anything productive, because that's the best word I should be using, productive, because good is like I said, 50-50. But like as long as it's not translating to anything productive, there's no reason to do that. And yeah, now some people out there are like, okay, so technically what Hitler was doing was productive because it led to, well, yeah, yes, it did. But how can we know that's good or bad? Okay, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question, right? And this is for the people listening or viewing this podcast. Why do you think mass murder in general on Earth, why do you think mass murder is wrong? This is a very, very, very serious question. Why do you think this is wrong? Why do we think that mass murder is wrong? And I'm not saying why do you personally feel it's wrong because you're a human. No. Look at it bigger than that. Broaden your horizon. Why do you think mass murder is wrong? And I'm not just talking about mass like shootings. I'm saying like mass murder in humanity's, thing. Why do you think mass murder for humanity is wrong? And now there are a lot of people out there right now being like, come on. So I have to actually give you an answer why killing people is bad. What if someone killed someone from your family? I didn't ask that. I didn't ask if someone kills. I said, why do you think mass murder is wrong? It's a simple question. Give a good answer. Think about this. It's psychology. I'm pretty sure this is probably one of the questions you have in Psychology 101 or something. I know a lot of people that practice psychology and stuff and like study psychology. So like this is kind of the thing. This is their go-to. Because it's like, what exactly makes you feel like that's a bad thing? Why do you feel like that's not just normal? Why do you think that that's not just supposed to happen? Why do you think that we shouldn't just do that? Because, hear me out, a lot of people are going to get very, very pissed off about this next statement, but cancer is literally a form of life. Okay? Now, hold on. Cells in your body, when they reproduce, when they're being produced more and more and more by what form do we use in the body? Is it mitosis or meiosis? It's one of the two. Right? I think it's mitosis because it's splitting. No, but it's being reproduced. It's hard for me to tell this, but I think it's mitosis. But like, there's a form of cell division that goes on in the body. It's an organ. This is a thing that organisms just do. So, like, organisms, the classification of organisms, this is a thing they do. But like, the thing is, when organisms do that and replicates, sometimes just purely based on how life works, it's never exactly how you think. It's like a computer program over like a bunch of different computers and different arrays and different this and that. Something's bound to maybe go wrong a little bit. So like, when that happens, sometimes some of those cells don't become like everyone else, right? It's kind of like, because now think about yourself like this. I'm gonna put you in a state of, why am I making this look like I'm hypnotizing you? But like, put your mind in a state of, I'm not human anymore, okay? I'm outside myself. I'm not human anymore. I'm outside. I'm bigger than this. I'm something else. Don't say I'm bigger than this, because that just kind of, that does another thing, because now you're feeling like none of this is important to you anymore. I also try to make myself not go to that, because sometimes I'm like, well, if you look at it from the universal perspective, which is bigger than us, why do I think the universal perspective is bigger? Well, like, this is the thing. Put your mind in a different mindset. Put yourself in the fourth dimension, if you will, if that's the easiest term to get you in this mental position. Put yourself in the fourth dimension and think, what is cancer really? This is cells multiplying, right? And now in your brain, put yourself in the mental consciousness of one of those cells in the body. And now think, if people were being born all the time, you know how everyone's being born, and a lot of people are born different ways, a lot of people have different talents, a lot of people have different disabilities. Now imagine you were just born, right? And you were born to Earth, and you just happen to be really strong. You happen to be really buff, right? And you happen to be, unlike most people, extremely tall, extremely buff, extremely fast. So you had a very, very high metabolism, and you really, really needed a lot of food, right? Which means what? Which means you, born on this Earth, is now going to require more than the average person to survive, right? Hear me out. I'm getting somewhere. Now, you were just born. You're bigger, stronger than anybody. Let's not say the average person, than anybody. Now, you've put your mind in that perspective. Now, put your mind in the cancer's perspective. That cell, that very cell, that mitosis or meiosis, one of them, when that cell was produced in your body, that's now that person. It was produced, right? But it's very different from everybody else. Like, it's very different. And since it's very different from anyone else, it also needs more than everybody else. It's very strong. It's very big. It needs a lot of food. You see, like, all of these bodybuilders and stuff and how much food they eat. Are you seeing The Rock's cheat meal? Like, it's insane. That's like some people's monthly calorie intake he gets in one day. But like, whatever. So imagine that. Just imagine that exact scenario, but miniaturized for a cell. Now think what that cell would do when it needs to survive. it would need food. It will need space. It would probably want more like itself because, the ego of life. You kind of need more like yourself to continue production, because unless you're a cell, you're an organism that separates, through, I think that's meiosis. This is always confusing for me because it's been a while. Biology was a couple of years ago. But like, unless you're one of those cells that replicates into two perfect forms of itself, now you need to survive. And now, in this case, because remember, you're bigger. You're not bigger than this. You're in a different form. You're 4D. You're in the 4 dimension. And now you look at those cancer cells from where their perspective is, and go, okay, so it needs to survive. It now also, because we know this, has the ability to split itself to become more of itself by just basically absorbing from these surroundings. It's just separating. It's just getting bigger, and it's taken over now. From that cancer's perspective, and from a human's perspective, if you relate them together, what that cancer is doing is exactly what humanity has always done. That's what led to us being here. That's what led to all our technological advancements. It's one thing that just happened to be different enough that it took over everything else. Now you can see that if we feel like this thing is not great for me, because now put yourself in another perspective. You're now the earth, right? And now this organism is just taking over you. And now all the oxygen and everything that was trapped on you as the earth, because now you're crazy, you're a being, you're the earth. It's very confusing for a lot of people to do this, I know, but like, just try to stick with me. Now you're the earth, right? And this earth has other things around it. It has an ethosphere. It has how many spheres? I don't know. I don't remember. But like, it has all these different layers. And now, that earth, now, just put yourself in that perspective. That earth now has these tiny things that are just popping up everywhere and just taking over the entire land. This was once just a barren area. It's just earth. It was just sand, stone, rock, minerals and stuff. And oxygen, nitrogen, all the stuff, just chilling. But then these things, these beings, human beings, just came to be and started taking over everything. And now they're like, we can get so powerful that we can basically just throw the earth away and just move somewhere else. So what started on the earth will just move away from the earth. Can now do whatever it wants to do with the earth. It can bore holes in the earth. Remember, now you're in the perspective of the earth. What do you think the earth will feel like at that moment? It's impossible to tell. And that's my point, okay? The point of this whole weird, arduous journey that I'm putting you through is there is no way to tell for a fact whether what you're doing is right or wrong from a general perspective. But from your perspective, it might be great. There's a reason we kill cancers in our bodies when we can. It's because from our perspective, it takes over our bodies. And when it does, it kills you. And kill is now another negative term, of course, that we've just classified to mean loss of consciousness, loss of life. And that's it. So it kills you because now you can breathe, now your brain doesn't function, and all that happens. And that's basically what cancer leads to. And because of this whole issue, when that happens, we now feel like, okay, I don't want that to happen because, life, how we treat life and stuff. So I will kill it. So I'll eliminate it. Sometimes they cut off people cut off parts of their bodies with cancers and stuff. So that's basically how we think about it. We're like, okay, I don't like it. I don't like how it's affecting me. And I want to keep myself sustained. I want to keep my consciousness alive. So I will just kill that thing off. Now, just imagine those cancers had our level of like mental intelligence and mental understanding. What would you do in that case? For the people who are like, okay, this is now I'm going to spite off even more people. For those people who go through the decisions of pro-life and whatever, pro-choice, the whole thing with giving birth or not giving birth, there's a lot of people who are pro-life who go like, still, it's a cell, okay, it's a living thing at this point, so it basically has all rights to live. It should be able to live. It should be able to sustain itself. But so does cancer, though. Okay. I can't wait for the comments. So, this cancer doesn't mean that it's negative. It doesn't mean that, okay, so we should treat human beings as cancers. If you want to, it's that simple. I feel like people should imagine a world, right? Imagine some futuristic world. Imagine some crazy, I don't know, some weird dystopian future where human beings have reached a point of awareness where we're like, all right, so nothing I do matters, but I don't have to do it for good or bad. I just kind of do what I need to do for the thing I'm doing and just be nice about it. Don't be an asshole. I always say that because, like, in general, that's kind of the whole point that I see whenever I think about, like, humanity, whenever I think of people. Anytime you want to judge something with good characteristics, and this is still biased by the human nature, but whatever. Anytime you're trying to judge something, it's always, like, based on how productive and how least of an asshole that thing is. That's pretty much it. The reason we see, like, honey badgers, the animal, as like virile, ferocious animals is because it's asshole-ish, because it behaves like, you know, it's virile. It's such a feisty animal, and like it tears, it kills, it does a lot of stuff for something in such a small package. That's kind of how we see things, and that's how I feel we should see things. Where it's like, you shouldn't be unnecessarily any particular way. You should just kind of do what feels the most productive. Because even at the end of the day, how do we really know what's productive? How do we, like, there's always all these questions at the end of the day. But for where we are right now, because we kind of have to put a cap on this. Otherwise, this is just going to go forever. This is going to be a conversation that keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Because that's kind of what I realized from a lot of psychology stuff. Is like, there's really no answer. And yes, that's like the number one thing in psychology. Is like, there is no answer for any of these things. It's just pondering and pondering and pondering until you reach enlightenment, which is in of itself also biased by your pondering, because you're still a brain, you know. Whatever the brain feels, it's most likely to tend towards it. It will tend towards that. No matter how logical you are, you're still biased by something, which is why I do strive to be very logical, but at the same time I have to be grounded to humanity, to what we've built, what we've created, because otherwise you kind of start seeing everyone, like Hitler saw Jews. Like, that's the thing. You kind of start seeing people as meaningless objects. Everything just kind of feels weird, and everything just feels like unnecessary, you know? And then that could cause issues for the other people in their own perspectives. But who's to say that's right? Who's to say that's wrong? For those very religious people, you might say that's God, you know? That's what God is. That's what God symbolizes. He's like the founder. He is the originator of what's good or what's bad. Except all of that still tends to be some human being's inscription on something else that we then take in, which is why it's good to study and good to go back and back and back and realize why something became to be, because it really does help to put things into perspective. But this has been a very fun podcast. I don't want to go on for too long. I don't like making these podcasts too long, because I feel like the little bit of stuff I have to talk about really gets your mind going way longer than I even want it to go, because this is just stuff I think of all the time, and I know I spend a lot of time in my brain, literally, just thinking of all these things. I know how long it can go for when you just ponder things, but it's nice. It keeps your brain healthy, you know. It's like a muscle. When you keep firing on all these different neutrons in your brain, when you just keep making all these things happen, it just keeps your brain going, keeps your mind going, and it's nice to just. It's nice to just have this mentality where you're like, okay, so I could know more. Yeah, but I could understand more. Yeah, I know this, but I could know more. Yeah, but do I really know this? Like, it's good to just think of all these things. It helps. It helps with your brain. It helps with your understanding. It helps with knowledge of the universe. It helps with everything. And the faster we all are as human beings to understanding all these things, I think the better it is. Because if we as human beings can actually reach true enlightenment, who knows what will happen? Well, it'll definitely be fun, you know, because like we would have basically found our actual purpose. Maybe humanity's purpose is no purpose, but at least by then we would know for a fact that it is no purpose. Because it's just fun. It's nice to think. It's nice to ponder. It's nice to have understandings of things. And I hope you guys feel the same. If you have any comments towards this, you can always leave a comment, like in the podcast. You can also email me. I'll have some kind of email right here. It's probably going to be howtokdj@gmail.com. So you can just email me. You can tell me stuff. So it'll be fun. It'll be really fun. Maybe next time, if you guys actually do email me later on, I can start answering questions. I can start talking. I can start responding. And yeah, this will be pretty fun. This is my second episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And I'll see you guys next time. Or actually, you'll see me next time. So, have fun, you beautiful people.